October 9th, 1967. Deep in the Bolivian mountains, a man lies wounded, surrounded by soldiers. He knows this is the end, but he doesn't beg for mercy. He looks his executioner in the eye and says, "Shoot, coward. You are only going to kill a man." That man was Ernesto Che Guevara, the most iconic revolutionary of the 20th century. Loved by millions, hated by many, and remembered forever. But who was Che Guevara? A hero who fought for the oppressed, or a fanatic blinded by ideology? To answer that, we must go back to where it all began. Ernesto Guevara de la Serna was born on June 14, 1928, in Rosario, Argentina. His parents, Ernesto Sr. and Celia de la Serna, were intellectuals, lovers of books, politics, and freedom. From the very beginning, Ernesto was different. He suffered from severe asthma, which tormented him throughout his life. Yet it didn't stop him. It forged him. While other boys played outside, Ernesto buried himself in books. He devoured everything: philosophy, poetry, politics, and history. He read Marx, Neruda, and Freud. His mother used to say, even as a child, Ernesto had the soul of a rebel. During long nights of wheezing and coughing, he read about heroes and revolutions. He dreamed not of riches or fame, but of justice. As a teenager, Ernesto was sharp-minded, sarcastic, and fiercely independent. He entered the University of Buenos Aires to study medicine, hoping to cure human suffering not just through science, but through compassion. But destiny had another plan. In 1952, at the age of 23, Ernesto set off with his friend Alberto Granado on a rusty old motorcycle they called La Poderosa, the Mighty One. Their mission was simple: to explore the vast lands of South America. What they found along the way changed the course of Ernesto's life forever. They traveled through the Andes, across the deserts of Chile, through the copper mines of Peru, and deep into the jungles of Colombia and Venezuela. Everywhere they went, they saw poverty, disease, and injustice. Workers were exploited, children were starving, and the rich lived in castles built on the suffering of the poor. In a leper colony on the banks of the Amazon, Ernesto worked as a volunteer doctor. He treated patients without gloves, without fear. He swam across the river at night just to celebrate a patient's birthday. That night, he wrote in his diary, "I will fight for these people with my life." The young medical student had seen too much to ever go back. He realized that medicine could only cure the symptoms, but not the disease itself, the disease of injustice. That journey transformed him completely. The old Ernesto was gone. From the ashes of the doctor, the revolutionary was born. Ernesto Guevara became Che, a nickname given by his friends, an Argentinian expression meaning buddy or comrade. It suited him perfectly. After years of wandering through Latin America, Che ended up in Mexico City in 1954. There, fate introduced him to a man who would change his life: Fidel Castro. Castro was a young lawyer in exile, planning a revolution to overthrow the Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista. When Che first heard Fidel speak, something ignited in him. Fidel spoke of justice, of dignity, of liberation. He spoke of freeing Cuba from the chains of tyranny. Che listened intently, and when Fidel finished, he told him, "Count me in." At first, Fidel saw Che as just a doctor, but in training camps hidden in the Mexican hills, Che proved to be more: a fighter, a strategist, a man of steel. When the 82 men of Castro's revolutionary force set sail for Cuba on a small yacht called Grandma in 1956, most thought it was suicide. The boat was overcrowded, leaking, and barely seaworthy. When they landed on the Cuban coast, Batista's army was waiting. Dozens were killed. Only a handful escaped. Among them, Fidel, his brother Raul, and Che Guevara. They retreated into the Sierra Maestra Mountains. In those wild jungles, they built the seeds of revolution. Che became both doctor and soldier, healing the wounded by day, fighting by night. His bravery, discipline, and charisma soon made him one of the most respected leaders among the guerrillas. He was ruthless when he had to be, executing spies and traitors without hesitation. For 2 long years, they fought Batista's forces, moving from village to village, gaining the support of the poor. Che's columns advanced through the mountains, striking swiftly and disappearing into the forest. He taught his men discipline, courage, and ideology. By late 1958, the tide had turned. Che's forces captured Santa Clara, a crucial city in central Cuba. When Batista heard the news, he fled. On January 1st, 1959, the revolution triumphed. The people of Havana poured into the streets, waving flags and crying with joy. Che rode into the capital not as a conqueror, but as a symbol of hope. But victory brought new challenges. The dreamer became a minister. Che took charge of Cuba's industry and economy, working tirelessly, sleeping only a few hours a night. He lived simply, drove an old car, and preached moral duty. He believed true socialism required a new kind of human being, one who worked for conscience, not profit. However, his vision clashed with economic reality. Industry slowed, and Cuba became dependent on the Soviet Union. Still, Che didn't lose faith. He saw the Cuban Revolution as only the first spark. The duty of every revolutionary, he said, is to make the revolution. In 1964, he stood at the United Nations in New York, dressed in his olive uniform and black beret. The world listened as he condemned imperialism and called for unity among the oppressed. His speech electrified some and enraged others. To many, he became the face of rebellion, fearless and incorruptible. But Che was restless. In 1965, he vanished from public life. In truth, he had gone to Africa, to the Congo, hoping to spread revolution there. But the rebels were disorganized, the terrain harsh, and the diseases deadly. After months of frustration, he wrote, "This is not the soil for revolution." He returned to Cuba secretly, exhausted but unbroken. Soon his focus turned to South America, to Bolivia, where he believed a new revolution could begin. In 1966, Che slipped into Bolivia under a false identity. His plan was to train peasants and launch a guerrilla war. But things went wrong from the start. The locals were afraid, the Communist Party refused to help, and the CIA aided the Bolivian army. His group, barely 50 men, became trapped and starving. His asthma worsened, his supplies ran out, yet his diary stayed hopeful. The future is uncertain, but the flame must not die. By October 1967, his band was surrounded. On October 8th, in a ravine called Quebrada del Uro, Che was wounded and captured. The next day, in the village of La Higuera, he refused to beg. The order came from above: execute him. Facing the trembling soldier, Che said calmly, "Shoot, coward. You are only going to kill a man." The shots rang out. He was 39 years old. When his body was displayed, people said he looked like Christ, serene, almost holy. The photograph of that moment spread across the globe, and the myth of Che Guevara was born. His image, captured by Alberto Corda, became one of the most reproduced in history. Che had become more than a man. He was an idea, one that refused to die. The revolution is not an apple that falls when it is ripe. You have to make it fall. Even today, his legacy divides the world. A doctor who killed, a humanist who fought, a romantic who dreamed of utopia through the barrel of a gun. But above all, he was authentic. In a world driven by greed and power, perhaps that's why his story still resonates. Because Che Guevara reminds us that one person can change the course of history, and maybe his true revolution wasn't in Cuba, Congo, or Bolivia, but in the hearts of those who still dare to dream of a better world. Ernesto Che Guevara, the man who lived for revolution and died for it.